Preparing.
We're live. We're live. Yay! Another Freaky Friday. Woo!
And it's Freaky Friday the 13th.
I know.
How wild is that?
I know. It's my favorite actual day of the year. Anytime we have it's one of the most magical and powerful days. You know, especially for women, 13 is a very powerful number. And so all of those ideas around that Freaky Friday, or like, you know, the Friday the 13th is cursed and blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit. As women, it's our power day. It's our power day. It's everything getting aligned. And so all the ladies that are watching today, I lovingly invite you to go do something spectacular and magical for yourself today.
Ooh, that sounds nice. Spectacular, personal, love on yourself.
Yes.
Kind of vibes.
Yes.
All
right. So how are you doing? Tell me. Okay, wait. Before we go on, because some people will see this and know who we are, and others will be like, "Who are these two awesome, amazing sex goddesses?" So tell us all about you.
You know, I love it when you take charge. It's all Sammy's with it. Hey, Sammy. Hey, Frank. So I am Alexa. I am the admin of the Kaleidoscope and the creator of the Violet Butterfly, which is the blog that all of these shenanigans stem from. I'm recently been calling myself a sexual influencer because I just do so many things. I write, speak, blog, sex educate. Literally, if it has anything to do with sex in a non-necessarily sexual capacity, I'm there. That is my jam. I'm most interested in community building and creating a safe space for everybody to have a sex conversation in a non-sexual way. It's my absolute favorite. And this lovely lady is Empress Gaia. She's been with me now. We had someone who's a mutual friend introduce us way back when, and she came on to Kaleidoscope Radio, which is the podcast that's all for you guys. And she was just so amazing that we had to do 2 episodes that we just couldn't get enough of each other. And so here we are in our, 4th or 5th episode of Freaky Friday?
I think it's, 4th or 5th,
oh,
yeah.
Amazing we've been together so long.
I know, right?
We had a relationship recently.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. So I'm Gaia Shauna Morissette. I'm your sexual wellness coach and your BDSM life coach and your orgasmic goddess for today. I basically am all about sexual wellness and sexual healing and looking at human sexuality as a holistic approach, mind, body, and spirit, and how they all intertwine with each other. My little elevator pitch is I make sex safe, I make it better, and I help you take it to the next level. Whoop, whoop.
Which means practically every single soul on the planet could use you.
I know. And that's why I do what I do. And I'm loving our relationship. It's like, it just keeps growing and we just keep co-creating, and it's just magical and it's juicy and it's sexy and it's awesome. So we're going to talk today about 2 topics that are really important for me personally in my own journey. Kink after trauma, and how we can use kink as a therapeutic process to heal that trauma. So before I go into my little spiel about how that's affected me and what I've done personally, do you have anything that you want to weigh in on?
Well, this has just been a topic that's come up quite a bit in my personal life. And it comes up quite a bit in the Kaleidoscope as well. And this topic comes up in nearly every conversation. You know, it's kind of like when people get really comfortable with kink or they're in the kink community or something like that, they get really, a lot of people I've realized, they get really good at owning their shit and saying, this is where a lot of, say, my preferences come from, or this is why I do what I do, or this is, what I went through and here I am today. it's really interesting. It's like a shame journey that leads into empowerment. It's really interesting. The only thing that I want to weigh in and just say is that I'm excited for this conversation. It was one that we were supposed to have maybe last time, but then we didn't get to it because I was in the middle of all kinds of craziness, and I wanted a nice, safe container around me to be able to receive and listen to the conversation, and to be able to tend to, if people are messaging and commenting and things like that. But yeah, I'm really excited to go into this and to let you share your story and see how this flows for the day.
Excellent. Okay, so let's start with one of the things that I do. One of my area of expertise is in reclaiming after trauma, healing sexual abuse trauma, emotional trauma. I'm kind of like the trauma expert. And I became the trauma expert because I went through and endured a lot of my own sexual abuse trauma, satanic ritual abuse trauma. So pretty horrendous stuff that I endured and experienced in early years of my life. And from that place of healing is how I've become kind of like the trauma girl. It's,
I'm going to disappear for literally 30 seconds, maybe less. I have to go open the door.
Okay.
But I will be right back. But I leave you to
Okay.
roll.
All right. So what I found in my own personal profound healing journey of healing from my own sexual abuse was actually BDSM and kink came into my life. And what it did for me personally, because I consciously was doing it, this is really important, and we'll get into this in a moment. The difference between re-victimization and consciously reclaiming your power is that I started to heal things, sexual activities that were triggers for me. For example, choking. I used to never, ever, ever be able to allow somebody to put their hand around my throat without me freaking out. You could touch and lick and fuck any other part of my body, but you could never touch my throat. And the reason because when I was a child, I was gang raped and my throat, and I was choked and I couldn't breathe and things like that. So one day with my Dom, my ex at the time, and well, not at the time, ex now, but partner at the time, I said, okay, hey, I want to see, I don't want to be afraid of this anymore. I don't want this to be something that interferes in how I move in the world. And I'm going to take my power. I said, do you want to do an experiment with me? And he's like, okay, because he knew that, I'm pretty crazy that way. So he's like, all right, let's do this. And so he put his hand and rested it on my throat. And we started to explore breath play. And at first I was like freaking out a little bit, but I was just like keeping my eyes open and breathing and going into it and being present in the here and now and not being triggered and being brought into the past. And over a couple of times of this experience, I was able to learn that I don't like the sensation of being choked. Not because of it being a trigger for me anymore. It just wasn't my thing. I didn't like the sensation. However, I really loved breath play if he put his hand over my mouth. And I basically took that back. The thing that would have made me go into curled up in the fetal position, I was able to reclaim that through using BDSM. So that is just one little story of one little sexual activity that I personally have reclaimed because of consciously choosing to do that. Right. Questions? Let's pause for a moment.
No, I think we had a few people that came on with us that were listening to your story,
Okay.
Listen to the story. I mean, I have my own personal revelations. They're a little bit different, for me, in my personal life, my father left when I was very young. I was maybe 3 whenever that happened. And I spent the majority of my life with men in my life that I felt at the time looked at me as a nuisance because they were with my mother or married to my mother or something. And I was I was the side effect. And I always challenged authority. I never respected a man ever before in my life. I never took men seriously. I always felt like I had to fight them. I always felt, that I needed to make myself known and hold ground and all of those things. And I fought, and even in my relationships until I started to explore with BDSM. And it was the first time that I ever respected a man. It was the first time that I ever felt completely safe, which is kind of wild. And I broke down. And I broke down in a very interesting way where it was over time, and going, what has shifted and changed for me in the way that I interacted with other men in my life and the position that I took. So it was an interesting thing that I feel like I'm going to be on that journey for quite some time. But, even trauma that didn't happen like directly, it wasn't like a physical abuse or anything like that. It was more of an emotional thing. And the interesting thing is that I never realized that that's the way that was what was happening. It was like this general revelation that happened after the fact. It was like I didn't even know that I had that issue. And all of a sudden I was more gentle to men and I was calmer with men and I understood. And then it's an interesting thing that happened with my standards as far as the men that I would allow into my, my sacred space or in my personal space. And so I think that it's an ongoing thing. You know what I mean? And I think even my preferences in relationships, I've tried to describe this, some people understand it and some people do not. The fact that I always had many men in my life that I never felt love from. I had one, was my grandfather, and that was really it. So it was, that I ever really felt like they loved me, but I had several men always, throughout my life. So when somebody asks me, what is your preferred relationship style? It's many men that actually love me. Mm-hmm. So it shows up now, and it's like, this is my way to heal from that when I was growing up, when I didn't have those things, when I craved them so much, when I was left without attention because the attention needed to be given, it was my mom that was the one that was going to have the attention. It wasn't, I was just we have to pay attention to the child, which, these are life circumstances. This is the way that I perceive this as a child. It's not like the adults in my life actually were trying to do that. But, me as an adult now shines a light there. And so I realized that the way that I structure and my partners or my relationships are even based upon healing from those things.
Well, everything we do comes from a place of whatever happened when we were children. Fundamentally, everything from our relationships to our careers, to our sex, to our friendships, to everything we do. It comes from either a reenacting of our childhood or a reclaiming of our childhood. And I think that's really important that that we talk about those two differences. So the human psyche, what it does is that when it had an experience that was traumatic on whatever level, it doesn't matter whether it was severe or mild, as long as I identify trauma as anything that interferes in your natural progression of development. So anything that stopped you and stunted you and kept you stuck is a trauma moment. And in that trauma moment, what happens is that if it's an event, what happens is that your body will take in every detail, from the time of year to the smells to the sounds, like every sensory detail. It's like a snapshot that happens in your brain of that moment.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is anytime a combination of any of those variables show up in your life, whether that's with a person, a situation, an experience, a potential experience, and it depends on the person and depends on the degree of how deeply that trauma affected the individual, you will become triggered. And being triggered is basically you are not present in the here and now, and you are not responding to the situation in the here and now. You are reacting to the situation that happened the very first time it ever happened to you. Right. And so therefore, if something happened to you when you were 3, you are moving with the capacity of a 3-year-old. That is how you are reacting to the situation. And so when we get into sex, So now that we all understand what it is to be triggered and trauma, yeah. Okay. Now let's bring that into the bedroom. So the secondary part is our sexual desires and kinks and fetishes are created earlier on in our sexual experiences. We aren't born a particular sexual creature. We are created a sexual creature. And so depending on what those experiences are and how you interpreted those experiences, if you had any sensory experiences during that experience, you will now create a desire. Whether that desire is right, wrong, weird, strange, it doesn't matter. It just is.
Right.
There is no right or wrong. It just is. So I'll give you an example from my own personal life that for a long time I could not conceptualize, and I've carried a lot of shame about because it made no sense. So for a long time, I could not have an orgasm unless I was tied up. And this was pretty early on in my, like, when I was about 16, 17 years old. I lost my virginity, consciously lost my virginity when I was 14. So between 14 and then about 15 was the first time I ever had a boyfriend tie me up. And then from like 15 till about 19, I wanted to be restrained. I didn't know why I wanted to be restrained. I hadn't even remembered my abuse before the restraint happened, because I didn't remember that I was sexually abused and all this abuse happened till I was 17. So here I am wanting to be tied up, being powerless, and yet feeling unsafe all at the same time. And what it was happening is my mind was trying to recreate the trauma that I experienced when I was younger. So it was trying to bring it up to the surface so I could look at it. So it was basically putting me in scenarios that would trigger me to remember my abuse. And that's how complex our little noggins are, right? So, but yet there was pleasure associated with all of that. And so it took me a while to, once I got, I started to remember my abuse. And then I was like, then I thought there was something seriously wrong with me, because how could I enjoy being restrained and tied up after being sexually abused and violated in such horrendous ways, and so powerless? And what it was is each time I did it, not only was my brain trying to get me to remember it, so now I remembered it, now it was trying to recreate it and do it differently, like have a different outcome. So that's right. The secondary part of what our brain does, is it will create a trauma or recreate a trauma and then try to have a different outcome. But the only way you ever have a different outcome is if you're consciously aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, so you can choose to have a different outcome. And this is one of the problems that I see as a sexual wellness coach and a BDSM life coach, is that people don't understand that part of it. And so they keep finding people to re-victimize, to re-abuse them, and they aren't coming from a place of consciousness, and they aren't making the choices of who they share their power with and give their power to. They actually choose an abuser because that reinforces what they experienced in the first place. And so you end up playing out the same scenario with the same outcome. And the thing that when you move in the world of kink that's so important is that you understand your own abuse, you understand what your triggers are, and then you consciously, if you want to reclaim it, I'm game. I'm like, totally get it, 100%, the power of that. And also the sexual arousal that goes along with that, because regardless of whether it was right or wrong, when I was tied up, there was a sexual response that happened even when I was powerless because I was being abused. My body didn't decide whether this was right or wrong. It just responded. And so because it responded, it's now one of my own personal kinks. When I am restrained, my body's like, ah, and I'm all gushy and I'm all wet. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It just is. So it's about our awareness and our knowledge when we go into that world, and understanding that if we don't have a conscious choice, then what we are doing is we are re-victimizing and we're basically reinforcing the abuse that happened in the first place, and you're just playing it out over and over and over again, and you'll never have a different outcome.
Right. Sounds like insanity. Layering potentially even more trauma on top of that, or having it take on a whole nother level. And, you know, it's like a variation of more intense kind of traumatic effect. I thank you for sharing your story with me, with the community here. It's beautiful to get to learn through other people's life experiences, to be able to reflect, you know, where have I been doing that? How am I doing that? Because you make it sound so authentic and clear, step by step, self-awareness, even in hindsight, that kind of thing, which is amazing. And I know that people are getting something from that, whether they are at least shining a light into some part of their life currently, or maybe what they've done in the past, but it's definitely helping people. Not that long ago, I posted, which was interesting. I posted, it was just a quick one-liner that was, we have no control over what turns us on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting, the responses, because there were people that were like, yes, of course, makes sense, that kind of thing. And then there was people like, I disagree. And I thought, this isn't something you can disagree with. Your body will respond to what your body responds to, though your consciousness and the choices that you make are whether you act on that or not. But regardless, you'd have no control over some of the things that get your blood pressure a little bit raised, your cheeks flushed, your eyes dilated, the sexual response in the organs, whether the blood rushes there, the breath quickens, those kinds of things. You don't have any control over those things. But I would say if it's something that you wind up having a response to and you're like, whoa, what the hell is that about? I mean, if someone were there, Gaia, what would you suggest that they do?
Okay, so there's one other thing I wanted to, before we get into that part, that I think it was important, is that in order for me to become a well-rounded and healthy, balanced sexual being, not just being in that place of recreation of my experiences and the sexual responses that go along with that and the powerlessness, I needed to learn new orgasmic possibilities, and I needed to create new sexual neural pathways. Not because the other ones were bad, but the other ones were formed from a place of, not from a place of love, and not from a place of safety, and not from a place of beauty, right? They were really, sorry?
Not from a place of consciousness nor consent.
Or consent, right? So I wanted to create some new possibilities, right? So I then spent probably about, I'm going to say a year. It's going to be probably about a year of every time I masturbated, I would not think about being tied up and restrained. And I would think about being in a meadow and making love to the ocean. And having these like romantic experiences with nature, and
having sex with the universe.
Exactly.
Penetrate me.
Exactly. So I had to learn about how to receive loving touch. And I would start to have visual, fantasies about sensual touch and being touched in a loving way instead of being manhandled, right? Mm-hmm. And it took about a year. And over the course of the year because now, don't get me wrong, I was incredibly frustrated because here I would be whacking off, la, 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 and all of a sudden my old fantasy would pop in because it was my go-to, because it's what I knew. And so what I would do is be like, I lovingly, no thank you, not like, that's disgusting and wrong. I would just be like, not right now. I'm trying something new. We'll go back to you once I can create something new, right? And then I would go in, and it was frustrating. There was lots of times I was totally frustrated because my orgasm, it was like there and then it was gone. And then it would be there and then it was gone.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose.
Not aging. Like, God damn it, I lost it again.
Exactly. Fuck. So I had to sorry?
Best laugh ever.
So I had to reprogram new sexual patterns, new sexual beliefs, new sexual patterns, new sexual physical responses, create new neural pathways in possibilities. Now, I didn't get rid of the old ones and I didn't shame the old ones. I needed to have new opportunities. Now I have a large repertoire between doing it with the universe and, you know, beating the crap out of someone from a place of love to being tied up and spanked, right? Like I have a huge repertoire, and then making love with the universe. Like, and there's all of these possibilities and everything in between, getting really dark and freaky to, divine sexual experiences.
Maybe somewhere in between.
And lots in between. And then every once in a while, there's like, you know, vanilla normal sex.
Yeah. Which is because it's an every now and then kind of thing. It's just as exciting as the other stuff.
It is. It's totally. I'm like, woo, I'm going to have normal sex.
I'm so against the grain.
I'm going to do it with the lights off. Woo. Missionary position. Ooh, that's hot. So, yes. So that's I think if you have trauma, I mean, we all have, this is the thing, is that we all have trauma. None of us have escaped without it on some level. It's formed and created our sexual beliefs that aren't, you know, no shame, no guilt, no, you know, feeling bad about yourself. They're all intertwined in that. So on some levels, we all have trauma. But I really suggest anybody who's listening today who comes from a background of sexual abuse and violence and sexual violence, that you might want to reach out to somebody like me or that is an expert in trauma recovery and healing to reframe that for you so that you can start moving from a place of healing and reclaiming and not from a place of re-victimization.
Exactly.
It's so hard when you're first learning about it and you're first trying to do it. It's really confusing and there's lots of layers to it, and it's really difficult to call it for what it is, to see it for what it is. And I recommend finding somebody that can help you through that process, that can help you to create that framework and to dissect that for you so that when you choose to play, you have the language and you can set those boundaries and those parameters with your lovers.
Absolutely. And I will go ahead and tell you guys that, well, first off, I wouldn't have Gaia coming on every Friday with me if I didn't have full trust and faith in her and her expertise in what she is creating and doing in the world. But I will go ahead and say, not only would I recommend Gaia, but I would also tell you not to come to me for that, because it isn't something that I specialize in. It's not something that I would call myself an expert in. It's not something that I put out there as I can help you with. Granted, people oftentimes when they want to go on a sexual explorative journey, which is typically what I am called upon to do, is to help you start your journey in diversifying your sex life. A lot of times this stuff comes up, but even when this stuff comes up, I will usually give resources or mention Gaia or someone that does something similar to Gaia, as if you need even more in this area, this is where you should go. Not just because I'm not speaking from personal experience per se, you know, I have my own things going on, but you know, I just want to make sure that people get the best, not just service, but they heal fully. Like you're doing the work and you're showing up and you're having these realizations and you are wanting to work through this stuff. So it's like, yeah, you want to make sure that you get the most out of it. And you don't hurt yourself and you do a good job, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think when you're seeking out an expert around reclaiming your sexuality and healing from sexual abuse and sexual trauma and sexual interference, that you seek out somebody that, one, you feel a good connection with. Like, listen to your intuition, number one. Number two, I think it's really important to ask your expert what personal experience do they have in this field. I have a lot of like educational background that I actually never use with my clients, ever. I Right? And I do have, you know, the psychology degrees and yada yada yada, but I don't actually use any of that stuff when I'm working with my clients. Or did I use any of that stuff in my own personal healing and journey? So I think it's really important
Sounds
that,
familiar.
sorry?
It all sounds familiar.
Yeah, that it's super important that the person that you're working with, one, you feel good about, and two, that they have some personal experience on some level with trauma and done their healing. And then the next question I would ask anybody is to say, what have you done about your own healing? I'm always on a healing journey. I'm constantly, you know, I am mostly healed, but I'm not completely healed. And my journey of healing from my trauma is going to be a lifetime journey. And each level I heal is awesome. And then there's another level. So it's a never ending journey of healing and growth and personal development. So when you're asking, those are the questions. You know, those are the questions that you need to ask when you're finding somebody to help you through this process.
For sure. Do you remember, may I bring up the other question?
Yes.
I asked you from before. I don't think we've answered it, just in case somebody was waiting for that answer of, if you read, so say for an example, somebody's listening to this and they start to have a lot of, you know, kind of this interesting moment of self-realization where they go in their mind and they try to play things out and they're like, what could this be from there? Start trying to figure things out. Or they've listened enough to us or played around in the kaleidoscope enough to where they're feeling more comfortable about their kink or maybe a fetish or any kind of paraphilia in general. And they're thinking, okay, I'm going to look at this now in a way to try to figure out where it comes from and potentially to grow. So what would be your suggestion as far as I'm having realizations? I think that's kind of how I asked it before, where it's like you're looking at something and your body's responding, or instead of shaming yourself, you want to grow from it. What would you suggest as a healthy way to navigate that?
Okay, so there's two levels to that, and two different levels depending if you're coming from a place of, it was created from a place of trauma, or it was just created from just an experience, right? Because that's important, that how you handle that is two different things. So if it's not coming from a place of trauma, it doesn't matter why it was created. Fundamentally, it doesn't fucking matter. If your vagina or your penis is aroused at the fact of, I don't know, somebody blowing up a balloon, it doesn't matter. You know, we'll take an obscure sort of fetish, that, you know, balloon fetishes, where, you know, most likely, most logically, that was created at a moment at a birthday party that you got excited and someone was blowing up a balloon and you watched them blow it up and you got tingly, or you were eating cake in that moment and it was delightful, and all of a sudden it turned into a sexual moment. And right. every time someone blows up a balloon or pops a balloon, you get an erection or you come, right? Like it just is. It doesn't matter why, it just is, right? Or feet fetishes, like foot fetishes often, or shoe fetishes. Like lots of these things come from these like little moments that happen when you were a kid. And some of them are like really easy to pinpoint, and others they're not. And it doesn't matter why they happened. They just are.
Maybe this is why I'm so obsessed with waterfalls. We get around to what, like, I mean, okay, I'm having my own little moment here. Anyway.
Okay. Like it doesn't really, knowing why and how it was created it doesn't change it. It doesn't make it more valid or less valid. It just is. If your body's response is your body's response, and as long as it's consensual of everybody and there's doing no harm to yourself or others, then it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, that's your thing. Like, I have one that for the longest time I thought, wow, I'm like a total weirdo, but whatever. It's that I have a thing about Home Depot, and I'm in Canada, so Home Depot and Canadian Tire.
What you were about to say, you're like, well, I have a thing about Home Depot.
Like, I walk into Home Depot and I gush, and my breath starts going, and my dilation, and like my whole body is like totally turned on in Home Depot. And it started when I was young. Before we had Home Depot, we had Canadian Tire, because I'm in Canada, and it's kind of like a Home Depot. And I would walk in and I'd feel tingly and I feel all aroused. And I was like, I don't know. Like, and all my boyfriends thought, like, you are so weird. Why, when we leave these like home renovation places, you jump me? Like, I was just like, and I didn't understand. And I still don't understand. And it doesn't matter. The whole point.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's kind of like, right on. You want to turn on Gaia? Take her to a home renovation place. Sweet.
Right.
I don't even have to work at turning her on. She'll just, the place will do it for me, right?
Take you to a bookstore.
So
I use it in a bookstore.
Yeah.
I'm like vertigo. I don't even know what's up and down sometimes when I'm in there. This reminds me, do you remember the show Nip Tuck?
Yes.
Remember that show on FX? I freaking love that show. I was a teenager when that happened. Remember when Christian Grey, where'd that come from? Well, obviously 50 Shades.
Yes.
Christian was his name in the show.
Yeah.
He was a taller one. And he had a moment in time where he couldn't stop fucking the couches. He couldn't stop fucking the cushions. Like, it all makes sense now.
So it's like we have
everything in that show, but like in particular, it was the couches here.
Yeah. And so the point is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Now, it does matter where it comes from if it's trauma-based, because you need to consciously reclaim it. Right. And that's about what we were talking about earlier, about like knowing where it is, what it is, how to set the parameters, and then how to consciously choose to do something different and not replay it out, but to make a new ending, create a new ending to that story. So that's important for you to understand where it comes from. But if it's not coming from a place of trauma, then it doesn't fucking matter. Just enjoy it.
Yes, I love those things. And even Danielle, who's on here, hey Danielle, and Marianne and Yana and Sammy still, and Olivia, I noticed just came on. She said, I love it, love what's sexually innate within us, and in a sense, do no harm. Yes. So she's like, yes, with hearts and things. Or it's like, people ask me, like, how do you know it's healthy or not? I said, well, is anyone getting injured? Is everyone consenting? All right, well, there you have it. What the fuck does it matter past that? If no one's getting hurt, you're not getting hurt, everyone's conscious and consenting, who cares?
Yeah.
Get your rocks off.
That's right. However you want to get your rocks off. On whatever you want to get your rocks off. As long as it's consensual. If you're going to get your rocks off on people's couches, make sure that they are okay with you doing it on their couch. Otherwise, do your own couch.
Yes. So it was funny, where I took that phrase of like, your turn on is not really up to you. I remember I think I got that from Sex Outside the Lines. Chris Donahue, Dr. Chris Donahue is the author of that book, sexologist in the States. And I think he gave the example of a little boy getting spanked, or getting his hand slapped or like hit with the ruler, which that's not really a thing anymore, punishment in schools like that. But having that at a time where he was going through hormones and puberty and whatever, where there was a spike in testosterone. And so if the hit happens, but then his penis gets hard or flushed with blood or something like that, then all of a sudden you look at him later in life and he's paying femdoms to do all the things. It's like it makes sense. It always shows up. Something that you didn't touch on also was that, as an adult, this is our time. Like when we play, this is our time, sex. So we do not really get a free pass to use our imaginations. There's no such thing as like having an imaginary friend or, pretending like you've got lasers or tentacles or whatever when you're an adult and, you don't have that childlike innocence anymore, except when you're in a sexual capacity, because what we're encouraged role play and fantasies and act it all out. So in your sex life, this is your time to literally be a kid again, which is so strange because this is the thing that makes you an adult. So it's wild how all of this is braided together and all intertwined. But me personally, it's like, just imagine the fuck out of whatever you want to whenever you're having sex and interestingly, take your childlike innocence back and let it unfold however you're going to let it unfold in your sex life.
Yeah. And I think like that's how I utilize the Spank Bank. That's what I look at the Spank Bank, our Rolodex of fantasies, is our opportunity to explore, expand, imagine. It's also really important that the more you exercise your creativity and your imagination, the more it shows up in the rest of your life in your work world, in your capacity to creative problem solve, your capacity to create, to develop, to share, like all these things. So we need to continue to exercise our creativity and our imagination. And as a child, that's why we do it. As a child, we do that as a part of our development. And when we become an adult, we need to do that. Otherwise, we are boring and we stay stagnant and we aren't our brilliance in the world, and we don't create and develop in the world. We just got to go in and in and in and in and in. And we're boring. We're like robots. So it's important not only from a sexual gratification standpoint, but for development of your mind in the rest of your life, that the more you explore, the more you expand, the more that you imagine, the more you can create in the rest of your life.
I love it.
I love it too.
I think, well, you know, I love everything and everyone, and especially you. But I think we really gave, even between our personal stories and tips and tricks and insights and things, we touched quite a bit on this trauma thing, which it'll always be brought up in future. You know, it pops up every so often in just about everything that we do, which is perfectly fine. We gave it its attention, but I know before we even started the live, which those of you who are joining us, we did start a little bit early today, because we are real people with real lives, and I'm actually on the other side of the world. So we're doing our very best to keep this Freaky Friday thing going in the block of time that's within an hour either way. But you were talking about something completely different, kind of related, but not so much. So you're like, I really want to bring this up to the group.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I really want to talk about how do I want to word this? So I'll just share some experiences. So I have been exploring. I've been single for the last year and a half. Yes. Yeah. The last year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And in that time, I was expanding my repertoire of my harem. And what I started to find was it was really difficult to find people actually, because I sleep with women too. So to find people that were really okay with just having sex and following through on those parameters. And as women, we've been taught often that all these men are running around wanting to have non-committal sex, and they don't actually want to have relationships. And there's a lot of men running around saying, I want to have non-committal sex and I don't want to have relationships. And so I come along and I'm like, hey, I just want to suck cock. I don't want any parameter. This is it. Come over to my place. I'll give you a blowjob, because I really want to just give you a blowjob today. I don't actually want to have sex. So I just want to suck your cock, and then I want you to go. And and you would be amazed at how challenging that is to have somebody be like, sure, I'll take you up on that offer for a non-committal, non-reciprocated blowjob. And so I started to really see that so many people were like, no, I can't be above board on it. It was about the fact that people were uncomfortable because I was just straight up with it. There was no games. There was no manipulation. There was no shame. There was no guilt. And so what I've been watching is how many people are moving from a place. Now, one of the men that I offer a blowjob to was like, I can't come over to your house for you to give me a blowjob. However, can we date? Can we go out? Can I take you out for dinner? And I was like, so if you take me out for dinner, then it's okay for you to come over for me to give you a blowjob? He's like, yes.
There has to be all these official things. You got to fit in the box.
And so, but the box is broken.
The box is broken.
the box is broken, because the truth is that I've known this particular man for a couple of years, and we were friends long before I ever offered a blowjob. And and
But we
he
also
was,
tell men that they have to work for it, and that
yeah,
they have to take you somewhere, and they have to do the things in order to get you to that point where it's like, I haven't done my job or my duty. I don't even think I could get hard unless I do all of those things. It's like you have to have it in that order almost. It's really wild.
but I've had many conversations with many men who say that they just want the blowjob. They don't actually desire to do the courting and the dating and the blah 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 and the games and the, you know, chasing and the phone numbers and the texting and the blah blah blah. They just really want the blowjob. But I'm telling you, that's a fucking lie.
It is
That's a fucking lie.
It's a lie. I know. Yes, I know.
And if the reason it's a lie is because there's shame about sex. So it's almost like you must feel bad internally, otherwise you can't have sex.
Right, you can't get the turn on.
You don't get the turn on. So that's really kind of, I just wanted to have a conversation about this, because I'm tired of hearing people say, no, I want consensual, you know, I want consensual and open and clear boundaries and non-committal sex, and that's a fucking lie. That's a lie. Liar, 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 pants on fire. Because if that was true, I would have no problem with my offer of a blowjob. And I'm really good at giving blowjobs. So it's not even like, and I'm like a fucking sex expert, man. So if I can, as a sex expert that teaches people how to suck cock, cannot actually offer free blowjobs and have anybody take me up on it, it means we have a problem. Houston, there is a problem.
Oh my God, you are cracking me up this morning. Wait, let me tell you, this is a really big, this is really important. This really is a whole lot bigger than, I mean, especially for a lot of enlightened conscious individuals where it's like, I'm not just going to take any Joe Schmo. I'm going to choose you because I vetted you energetically. We have whatever we have that's in common. I just want to suck your cock now. Like, I want to exchange some energy with you. I want to make you feel good. And maybe I'm going to go about my merry way or whatever the case. And it's like, in theory and practice, this doesn't line up. And very crazy. I was just in New York City. I'm actually going to line up back there next week for a couple of days. But I went to a touch point, which I don't know if you know about touch point, but it's an event that happens. It's like a town hall for love and sex. And it's people that come, but they're usually between a certain age group. And the topics, you vote on them the night before in an email, and then they're brought up and they're open to the floor, and you raise your hand and you can share a story. And so I happened to actually make it to the one where the question was transparency. When do you tell the people that you're interacting with that either you want to have sex with or that you want to get in a relationship with, when do you tell them certain things? And so it winds up being like, when do you share how many partners that you've been with? And I'm like, why does it, like, that hasn't been in my sphere of questions in a very long time, since maybe I was a teenager. And questions of like, when do you tell them that maybe you also like the same gender? Or when do you tell them, you know, or when do you open up about a fetish or kink or something like that? And I remember I kept raising my hands, but he'd already called on me before, but I wanted so badly. I should have saved my previous share for this one, because it was like, I get frustrated whenever I take the road of, I'm going to be very transparent with you, from like, hi, I'm Alexa. Hi, I'm Alexa. You need to know what kind of crazy train you're about to get on. Like, hello, I operate non-monogamously, I'm queer, I'm kinky, and I like all these crazy things, and you may never see it on the outside, but trust me, it's in there. And I don't give a fuck whether you believe it or not, it's in there. So it's like all of these things, right? And I try to be open about them, and I do. It's really interesting that I found at a particular time when I was really not interested in any commitment, where I would say, I don't practice monogamy. It's not that I don't practice it. It's not something that it's a part of my life. It's not even something that I really acknowledge. It's like not a thing for me anymore. I work through my shit. It's not a thing for me anymore. It's not the way that I want to live my life, blah, blah, blah. So in theory, it's like men go, oh, she's just down to fuck. Yeah, she's down to fuck. Like, that's going to be amazing. And guess what happens? They get attached.
Oh God, yes.
They want more. And a lot of times it's like, well, then we just get to have sex and she'll come around. or it's like I'm being as open as I possibly can be, wanting to have, the person understands, like, I don't agree with it, I believe in, and these are not ideals. And it's like the other person, you would think that they're like, yes, I've hit the jackpot. She's just into like having sex and going to do cool stuff. Like she's going to remain a cool chick. And then it's like they do like a flip a switch or some kind of craziness, and then it hurts them more than it hurts me, because I got really good at saying goodbye. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think part of that is, again, there's two things. I'm a full believer that, hi, I'm Gaia, blah. Or I might be, at least on our first date, like on our first, like if we're going on a date.
Within the first date, maybe it's not like, hi, I'm Alexa, blah, but.
Yeah, within the first date, I'm like, this is who I am, this is how I roll, this is what how I move in the world. You're welcome to come on this adventure with me or not. Either way, this is who I am. I think, and this is, I think, really important, the takeaway. My hope is that the listeners' takeaway from this is to sit with yourself and find out what is your love parameter, your love sex parameter. What's your box, right? And I call it like your box. Some of us actually have boxes.
So on a different note, I call mine a teepee.
Nice.
Like a pillow fort.
Yes.
I got a pillow fort that's made of like, it's decorated with rose art, smelly pins, and those puffy stickers.
Nice.
That's
fantastic. So your box, which is your parameters about what tells you that you have to have this, 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 and this, which is your sexual belief systems, all fit into your box. And in that box, figure out what yours are, because you will not go outside of your box. So if your box says the only way I can have sex is if I have to take her out or him out on a date, or I'm taken out on 10 dates, or I am, talked to by this in this way, or this is what that has to be, or it only happens on Tuesdays, I never have sex on Fridays. Our sex box, our sexual belief system box, has a whole lot of really obscure, random, bizarre things in it. You need to figure out what that is so that you can then either keep that or expand your box. But if you don't know what's in there, then in theory, you're like, yes, these two girls are amazing, from a guy's perspective. Like, they are super cool chicks. They like to fuck. They like to get freaky. They're orgasmic. And they're super independent. Right? It's like, we're like every wet dream. Okay? However, in your box, your sex belief box, I fantasize about a girl like that, but I never sleep with a girl like that. There's the Madonna whore complex that might be playing in your sex box belief system. Your worthiness and self-esteem and performance anxiety might be playing out in your sex box. There's all these other parameters that are going on that are in direct opposition to this opportunity to have an incredible experience with a credible, powerful, strong sex woman. And the other thing, too, is that people are afraid of us, honey. Like, I just have to say that. Yeah.
So you knew that I was waiting. I've been waiting for a hot moment here, because I was like, I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah.
Shoemaker has no shoes a lot of times.
Yes.
Or the wife or the kids or something.
Yeah. The point is that when it comes to, everybody wants the dream of having this incredible sex life and having this incredible sexual experience. But most people are afraid of what that means and what it's going to bring up within them. And so when they come across you or me or some other, sexually empowered person, enlightened person, there's a desire, but then there's a run away as fast as I possibly can, because I'm not ready to look at what's in my sexual box, and I'm not willing to be challenged in what's in that box and what is in that belief system. And so, yeah, so that's all I have to say.
And that's all I have to say about that. No, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. It's like, you know, I've been recently calling myself, I'm like everybody's party trick, you know? Oh, you know, if people don't automatically just start feeling comfortable enough to start talking about sex in front of me, then one of the people that does know what I do will go, oh, here's Alexa, she talks about sex. And then the guys are like, oh, that's so hot. Like, that's what you do. And I'm like, yeah, just give us about 20 minutes max of a conversation before I intimidate the fuck out of you. And it's interesting. It's just it's just the story. It is the story. It's like, ooh, empowered and knows this and knows that. But I will watch in an evening someone, even if it's like an out kind of experience, yes, I like the intellectual and I like the this and I like the that, but I'm going to take home this one who doesn't know her hair from a shoestring, because it's easy to manipulate and it's easy to get where you want to go. And it's like, it's just I'm floating in this world with interesting lenses myself, you know. It's like, it's just interesting. We'll have to have more conversations about this. I think even conversations where more people who do what we do or do an aspect or like their business or their career is something that has to do with sex and sexuality, I bet we could get into a really big conversation.
Absolutely. But again, everybody who's listening, I want you to take a moment and figure out what's in your sexual belief box and really look at it and really, really look at it. Don't just be like, yeah. Like, look at it. What things do you need to have in your life to make you feel safe in order to engage in sexual activity with somebody?
I usually even say, what do you have to, where does your mind have to go in order for you to orgasm? Like, what does that even look like too? There was something that got brought up in the women's group that was like someone having issues with orgasm in a particular way. And I never have orgasms with a partner, and I only can do with myself when I'm on my stomach. And it was all of these questions. And, you know, my thought was, you know, where do you go mentally in order to achieve it? Like, in those few seconds, I don't know if you know who Galen Faust is, the kink positive therapist guy. He's in California, or maybe Oregon. I don't know, he's come onto the podcast as well, but he's like, I'm really interested in those few seconds where it's like, you're engaging, you've got the turn and you've got the turn on, but then it's like those like split few seconds right before you can actually orgasm. Where does your mind go? Because that tells you a lot about how you operate as a sexual being, maybe where your trauma comes from. It could tell you, you know, what do you need to expand on in order to actually get yourself to orgasm in other ways. And if you look at it and, like you were saying, train yourself to do other things, right? But you have to look at the box first. And I would say in that box, look at how you orgasm and what it takes to get you to orgasm. Look at that as a part of this box story as well.
Absolutely. And then once you have an honest conversation with yourself, then the next time somebody has propositions you or engages with you or asks you out on a date or hits on you, you know what your parameters are, so you can ask for what your parameters are. So you then are capable of being transparent as well.
This really helps your communication skills too. When someone looks at you and they are a willing and loving partner and they're like, I just want to please you. What do you want? And you're like, throat seizes. I have no idea what I want. I don't know. Well, it's not easy, but it's this exercise.
Yeah.
Of understanding how are you operating as a sexual being anyway?
And in a relationship, because I think it's not just as a sexual being, it's also in what allows you to become a sexual being. And that's all tied up in relationship and love belief systems, and like it's in monogamy and like all this stuff. It is all intertwined in that. And if the dishes have to be done, or otherwise I can't engage in a sexual activity, or I must it's a Friday and I never have a sexual engagement on a Friday because Fridays are for bingo or hockey or whatever.
Today is your day of rest.
Right? Like you need to know what those are because they exist. And that is whether that affects how you date, who you're compatible with, and they definitely plays out within confines of relationships. So you need to know what your relationship and your love beliefs, as well as what makes you a sexual person and what makes you feel safe to be a sexual person.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just running around, not getting laid.
Right. Nobody has time for that. Olivia says I can't have sex with my partner if the dog or the cat is in the room.
Exactly. Like that's what I'm talking about.
And Ashik mentioned about the BJ convo, which is one of my best friends in New York, and I love him so much. The problem why most men, or he's saying another reason why most men might not be able to agree with just the BJ is because they're thinking, what will you want in return? Mm-hmm. It's like, if I say yes, you're saying it. It's like the reverse from what we have going on in our head. It's like when salespeople say it's a no obligation sales call, but you feel the pressure. It never is.
Yeah. Well, that's just, which is also very true. That's a brilliant point because it really is that one of the things as women, and we need to be consciously aware of this, is that we use open-ended questions. We say one thing and we mean something else. You set basically there's a no-win way of navigating this, and men have learned, like you said, you're saying it's not obligatory. I just want to give you a blowjob. Yeah, but what is it going to cost me in the end?
Right, and rightly so.
And rightly so, because from a cultural standpoint, as a cultural standpoint, as women, we have been taught to do subterfuge, bait and switch, say one thing and mean something else. Like, that's one of the major things that I do with women is teach you to speak your fucking truth.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And to be that thing, to be what we think the other person wants or needs. I'm going to embody what I think you want and what I think you need. I'm going to be the cool girl. I'm going to be the one that doesn't care. So I'm going to give you that. And then I'm going to completely wind that facade is going to come crumbling down depending on my mental state, my emotional state. Tomorrow, could be next year, and any time in between, maybe even farther down the line. But that's, there's even the question of like, how soon do you lay out all of your preferences, not just your sexual preferences, but if you think as kind of a geeky nerdy guy, this came up at the crypto conference, a geeky nerdy guy, and you can't get laid or you can't get a girlfriend, so I'm gonna be the best version of myself that ignores all of my geekiness and my weirdness and the stuff that I have going on behind the scenes so that I can be dateable. And then I'm not going to say anything and say, maybe I've got an entire collection of Star Wars toys that are in the boxes and they're perfect and they're in this closet and they don't even get in the sunlight, like any even light, they're like in there. And then you're on maybe a fourth or fifth date with a girl and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing such a good job of putting on the show. And you mentioned very lightly something about Star Wars and she says, oh my God, I fucking hate Star Wars. It's just a bunch of geek shit. And you're like, how many days and dates have you just wasted, and could you be with this person any longer? And now you're like, but I'm this far in and there's so much. It's like, how soon do you just be your freaking self?
Right away.
Sex and life. Right away.
Right away. Be who you are. People will love you or they'll be a good fit or won't be a good fit. I'm going to change from the word love. So either you are a good fit or you are not a good fit. It is not a judgment call. It doesn't mean you fail. It's just you are either a good fit or you aren't. And if everybody spoke their truth and actually moved from that place, we wouldn't have those fears of, sure, you say that. However, what is it going to cost me?
Exactly.
So my job in the world, and one of the things is that I say who I am, what I do, and how I move in the world. End of story. I do not sugarcoat anything. If I want something, I say it. And I'm not lying. I'm actually being honest. And I get that others are not used to that, but that's part of my job of what I do in the world is to change that. So let's everybody start being fucking honest.
Woo! There's nothing quite as sexy as truth telling. I think I've had that up as opposed to, it's like, you feel that comfortable with me to completely bare all, let me just bare all. Like there's nothing quite there's a different kind of sexy. It's like when someone is just really, really, really freaking telling the damn truth.
Yeah.
You can feel it. Gaia, another freaking Friday.
Fantastic. Woo, woo.
Fantastical.
Woo, woo.
I love that. We covered so many different things in this time. Just when I keep thinking like, the next Friday rolls, I'm like, what are we going to talk about? But there's always something.
Oh my God, we're going to be doing this for years. There's always something to be talking about.
Of course. And who knows where I will be or you will be in the world whenever we do that. Hopefully at some point we're going to get to do Freaky Fridays where we're like right on side of each other and we're having a conversation like this to the
I know.
Right?
I know.
Speaking
Which is
of-
coming soon.
I know. I'm like, we're planning it. It's in the works. There's lots of little details and things that we're working on and sifting through. But the Kaleidoscope knows I have personally, I've got a ladies retreat coming up in the first weekend of November, and that is with Leah. So that's a sexy, witchy, spiritual sexuality empowerment event that's going to be in New Orleans, but that is only ladies. So Gaia and I have had many conversations where we've spoken about men and couples. So the next Freaky Friday, we're going to put a general focus on men because, well, we agree that a lot of times we're both women. We speak from a woman's perspective. We can generalize about men, but we also understand that a lot of times men need the attention also. And more often than not, they're not really given the attention. So anyway, we're going to be bringing that up, but we also want to actually create events or do something where we bring men together and we lead. And actually, I have my notebook here. Can I rattle off some of the things that we were chatting about?
Yes, I'm so excited about it.
Okay, that was really intense and I loved it. So she says, so we're on the phone the other day, it was like 2 days ago. And these were some of the topics that we were just bouncing off. Where it's like, we're going to have a men's focus kind of retreat environment. What are we going to talk about? Understanding and reading women, sexual skill building, awakening the inner divine, healthy sexual expression, solo sex, ejaculation mastery. We were talking about emotional balance, stress management, relationship styles, how to deal with rejection, what is consent like, and all the variations of it to get really good at reading it. Sexual gratification, after sex experiences, how to be the best or your best version of a lover when it comes to the aftercare, because it's really important with women. If you're not taught or shown or that's not discussed with you, that's something that's very important for women. It is important for men as well, but that post-coital, right? That's when a woman's oxytocin level is the highest after sex. And there's some certain things that you can do to really bond. So anyway, that's just a topic, one of the many topics, safer sex practices, not just safety as in like condoms and dams and spermicide and all of that, but safety as far as your emotional safety, yours and hers or his, depending on who your partner is or theirs. Sitting with your masculinity, we were talking about that, sitting with it. What does it look like? Exploring it. What does your man box look like? And let's redefine what that damn man box is. Just really getting in touch with you and creating a really, really safe space to speak your truth and to finally be in an environment where people are listening to every single word without judgment and from a place of love. So we are so excited to be, in the works of collaborating, putting this together to where we can bring some men together and really, 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 and this is like, I'm going to say this is like our silly master plan, because it's like, we understand that we're going to wind up impacting a lot of women's lives by doing this, even so.
Well, I also think for me, the excitement, as you saw clearly a moment ago, is for me, I spend a lot of time working and healing with men, and I love them. Like, I absolutely love and adore men, and I never always used to be that. And for me to create a safe space for men to explore, to share, to ask questions, to let go of their fears, of their performance, of what it means to keep their alpha status and their masculinity, and not being able to be who they are truly, and to speak their truths and all this stuff. For me, that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about this incredible experience and journey of transformation, and creating a safe space for men to have that, and to bring to the table. I mean, one, I speak fluent male. That's important to understand. I speak fluent male, but also I speak fluent female. So to help with that translation between male to female and from female to male, so that you can understand when a woman says X, and you're like, what the fuck does she mean? Because I don't think it's the words that she actually said. Like, that actually isn't what she meant. Then I can help with that. We can help in understanding that when she says X, you need to clarify with X, so that you can actually figure out what the fuck she wants. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry, guys, that you have to do that dance in order to understand what the fuck she wants. But it is what it is. So let's give you those tools so that you can be like, all right, I love you, but fuck, you're crazy, right?
And we are, and chaotic, and a hot damn mess, and that's okay. There's beauty in that.
There's beauty in that.
Couldn't live, and maybe you couldn't live without it.
Yeah, and helping to navigate and negotiate and figure that out, and to bring that, and to bring you to a place that we're going to explore this, is we're looking at exploring this in Costa Rica, which is a place that is really, really powerful, magically powerful, energetically powerful, being in the jungle, on the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and then also tapping into our divine masculinity and what that looks like, and creating that, what healthy divine masculine looks like, and being that solid, strong man, and being true to who you are, instead of being what you're told that you're supposed to be. So.
I love it. Olivia even said a little while ago, she said, a retreat for men led by women. Hell yeah.
But I also think it's really important that it's kind of, I think, I was telling a girlfriend of mine this yesterday, and she started laughing. She's like, it's so funny how full circle you've come, when I first started doing this work, I guess 10 years ago, and I was doing some meditation and connecting to the universe, and divine masculine said, you're going to help heal men. I'm like, fuck you. That's what I said. That was exactly what I said to the universe. I'm like, go fuck yourself. That is so not happening. I am not working with men. And the universe was like, yes, you are. And I'm like, fuck you. And I'm like, and the universe basically said to me, who better to sit and help men heal than a woman who's come from so much negativity and so much abuse, being on the receiving end of, often most of my perpetrators were males, and to be able to come to that place of empathy and compassion and understanding and love for men, and to see them for who they are. Who better to do that work than you? So I swore and resisted for about a week, and then this beautiful male client showed up in my life, and he changed everything for me. He was like the most amazing human being I had ever met, and I'd seen how much hurt and how much trauma and how much pain he's gone through in from his relationships with women and all these things, and I started to change. It changed me. It changed who I am in the world and how I engage with men, and how amazing I think men are. And that, as being a hardcore, like, anti-hating man feminist, to like, yeah, I love men place, like, is such a contrast of where I have been to who I've become. So I'm excited to share space with men, because not only will I create a safe space for them, but they will also teach me, and I will continue to grow, and I will continue to learn, and I will continue to heal, so that I can help women. It's actually more about me learning, but from me learning from the men, so that I can go and teach women how to stop being so fucking crazy and actually speak her truth and own her stuff and speak who we are. And so that to me is the beauty of this whole exchange, is that, you know, as women, we bring a unique perspective, but it's also, as the men, give us a unique perspective for us to then go do more work out in the world to help women as well.
Always.
Yeah.
It's a never ending, intertwining, infinity continuum.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it all sounds like words that have come out of my mouth.
It's beautiful.
Which makes a whole lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
So we have that plan. We have that in the works. We are also entertaining the idea of couples.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
bringing couples into Costa Rica to do work individually and as the couple as well. So we can talk, because we've been on for a while now, but we can talk about that maybe in the next one.
Yeah.
Towards the ends of it for sure. But it has a lot of the same ideas and principles, except it's structured around being, you know, bringing a couple together and reconnecting, and so many other glorious and magical things that if I start talking about it, I will have a hard time stopping. So I will stop myself.
And if we are going to talk next Freaky Friday and make it male focus, what would be really helpful, guys, is if you could start sending us questions, things that you want to know, or if you can't be on the live, if you're in the live, for you to start, you know, to ask us questions, because I think that makes it so that it's what you guys want, not what we think you guys want.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
That also sounds familiar at a completely different level. Let me give you what I think that you want. So sit down, pay attention, you know, but you know, I'll throw some prompts out there, you know, specifically for the gents, and ask some questions, and we'll see what the feedback is for the next Freaky Friday. Where am I going to be? I might be in New York, but I might be in New Orleans again. We'll see. But I'll definitely be in my part of the world, in your part. Yes.
All right. So everybody go have a sexy, horny day. Go do something magical for yourself. At least make sure you have an orgasm today for yourself.
For yourself.
For yourself.
For humanity, and for all of the people that you will interact with throughout the rest of your day.
Exactly.
Of course. You know, we love you, Kaleidoscope. You guys are, I mean, like I've said many times over, I had no idea where the Violet Butterfly and the Kaleidoscope was going to go when I first started. It was very me-centric. And my, how things have changed, because now it has all to do with you guys. It has all to do with making a dent in the world when it comes to bringing sex and sexuality to light, but the truth. The variations of the truth, and the spectrum, the spectrums within the spectrums of how navigating life, love, relationships, sex, how that all goes down. And I'm super thankful to Gaia, and I'm super thankful to you guys who continuously show up and are doing the work. And you guys know at this point, I've cried way too many a tear telling you that my heart overflows, the way that you interact with each other, the way that you show up for each other, the way that you navigate your shit as you're realizing your shit by being challenged within the group space, and just still how there's people there that will provide the cushion for when you realize, ooh, what I've been thinking, what I've been saying, what I've been believing this whole time really isn't me, really isn't my truth. I just love the interactions, and I love how you guys show up for each other. So this is me gushing and saying that I love you and thank you to you a little bit more. And I will stop there. Gaia, love you. Thank you.
Mwah. Love you too. I will talk soon.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you before the next Freaky Friday.
Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.